Meet Bobby. He's leaning forward at the head of the conference table with his arms crossed, listening to his sales team share their challenges. Missed deadlines, delays from other departments, clients changing their mind mid-project. Bobby listens, but as the complaints pile up, his jaw tightens and the air in the room gets heavier. Finally, Bobby cuts in. Look, we all have challenges, but you want to get better results? Do the work. Stop complaining. You can't control what other departments do, so focus on what you can control and stop making excuses. The room gets quiet. Eyes drop to notepads, and as the meeting ends, Bobby walks to his office with this uneasy feeling that he did not handle that well. Bobby's been in construction for over 30 years. He started in sales, worked his way up to general manager for a successful residential and commercial firm. And now he is the lead of two different departments, and these two leaders have teams of their own. And lately, those two teams, they've been butting heads rather than collaborating. And Bobby's salespeople, while very capable, are just not performing at the level he expects them to. They seem to get so easily distracted and they waste their time on things that don't matter. And he wishes that they would focus on the fundamentals the way he did when he was in the role, but he's realizing that barking orders is not creating lasting change. And Bobby's frustration is now seeping into his home life. He's been married for over 25 years. He has 3 kids, a grandchild he loves dearly, and he finds that he's snapping at them more often, and he's losing his patience, and there's nothing worse than that feeling of regret for letting out his frustrations on his family. What Bobby wants is a successful team, a team that performs at a high level, that hits their deadlines, that collaborates well. And his struggle is finding a way to lead his team without burning them out, or without burning himself out. Today, I'm speaking with Alan Stein Jr., keynote speaker, author, and former high-performance coach who spent 15 years working with professional athletes like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Kobe Bryant. And he now helps leaders to raise performance by simplifying success, mastering the basics, and creating teams that thrive under pressure. And I'm excited to hear how Alan would help someone like Bobby to be able to get his people more focused, get them aligned, and get them executing at their very best. And if you'd like to submit your story to Unstuck so that an expert guest and I can help you through your unique challenge, go to jayabbasi.me/podcast or click the link in the show notes so that you can apply to be featured on this podcast. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Alan, you've had an incredible career. You've worked with professional athletes. You're a globally recognized keynote speaker. But I read that it all started with a group of 5th graders and collecting leaves. And I wanted to hear that story.
You certainly did your homework. And yes, that technically is where it all started. Although I guess we could go back a little further, because what's important to my journey is the fact that I fell in love with the game of basketball at 5 years old. And here I am on the doorstep of being 50 years old. And basketball still is a major passion and pillar of my life. And the reason I share that for context for your listeners and your viewers is that I've been able to make a living and build an extraordinary life around something I've been really passionate about ever since I was young. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. But that does lead us to that time when I was in college and I was doing my student teaching. And at that point, I didn't really have concrete direction on what I wanted to do after I graduated college. But I knew I wanted to do something in the game of basketball. And, we're talking about the late 90s now. So there wasn't the plethora of jobs available that there are today to make a living in that sport. And I just decided that I'd be a high school teacher by day and then coach basketball at night. And I found out pretty quickly that I wasn't near as passionate about the teaching part of that equation as I was about the basketball part. And what really cemented that was I'm doing my student teaching with a group of fifth graders, and the teacher had us go outside to collect and study and laminate and label leaves. And I just remember sitting there in that moment, thinking to myself, now granted, thinking with a little bit of self-righteousness, if you will, like, who cares about leaves? I certainly know I don't care about leaves, and there's no way I'm going to spend the next 30 years of my life trying to convince other people that they need to care about leaves. And I just knew in that moment that wasn't for me. And I literally left that session, went and met with my advisor and said, I need to change my major because there ain't no way I'm going to talk about leaves for the next 30 years. And, there's a lot of lessons that we can pull from that. It ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made because it put me on a different path, which then led me to the work in some fashion that I'm still doing to this day. But yeah, that was kind of a monumental time in my life. And I can look back now with hopefully a little bit more maturity and wisdom, and understand that it wasn't just about the leaves. It was about learning how to learn. It was about developing different critical thinking systems and processes. It was more than just the leaves. The leaves just happened to be the micro of what they were doing that day, but it was really the macro of what all school curriculums are designed to try and help us with. So I have such a strong appreciation and reverence for teachers. Both of my parents were elementary educators for 30 years, so I really adore and appreciate teachers. But I'm glad that I took a different path.
Yeah, well, in many ways, you are an educator in what you do now. Right? It's just in a different format. And what I'm also hearing from that story, Alan, is it gave you insight into what you're not passionate about. And oftentimes we need that, don't we? It's like, yes, we want to find out what we're passionate about, but we also want to go through experiences that show us what is not the right fit.
Absolutely. In fact, so I have 3 teenage children. I have 15-year-old twin sons and a 13-year-old daughter. And that's one of the things that I talk to them the most about, was that you want to try a variety of different things. And when you try something and you don't like it, and you can cross it off the list and say, I never want to do this again, that still moves you closer to eventually finding your purpose or finding your calling. So it was incredibly valuable. And I have a list of things since then that I've tried that I said, oh yeah, there's no way I'm going to do this either. And each and every one of those opportunities took me a little bit closer to finding out what it is that I was meant to do and that I want to do and am most passionate about. So yes, that is incredibly valuable. And it's kind of like that old adage, I'm a product of the 80s and 90s. And, if your parents tried to force you to have some vegetables or some food and you'd say, well, I don't like that. And of course, their standard response is, well, how do you know if you've never tried it? There is some wisdom to that. Now, I think with food, I think I can look at something and go, yeah, I ain't going to like that. I can tell you for sure. But generally speaking, it's actually pretty sage advice, because you may lean into something that you didn't think you'd like. And maybe you don't fall in love with that thing directly, but maybe there's something adjacent or tangential to it that you do end up liking. Or maybe there's a portion of that job that you do like, but you just don't like that specific position. But you say, hey, maybe I could. So yeah, I think now that I'm older, I do the best I can to try and have an open-minded look and view and try as many different things as I can, whether it's different foods or different cultures or different aspects of my job, and seeing what really sticks and what doesn't. And when something doesn't, I still take it as a win, because now it moves me closer to what I want to do.
Yeah, I think the open-mindedness was a big part of what I think is from that story, which is you can't just go in assuming that you're going to hate it or even assuming that you're going to love it. You go in with an open mind, and then you see how it feels. And like you said, it could be one component of it that really stands out. It may not be the whole thing. Now, that your journey then led you to start working with professional athletes in the space of basketball. Tell me how that came about.
So that did nudge me closer to saying, look, I want to do something in the game of basketball. And I had pretty singular maniacal focus on that while I was in college. And again, mind you, this is the late 90s. I started to develop an equal love for what we now call performance training. So the strength training and lifting weights and running and plyometrics and agility and all of that stuff was something I found incredibly fascinating. It was stuff that I was kind of using on myself to try out because I was still trying to be the best player that I could be. But it's something I really started to develop a love for. So when I graduated college in the late 90s, I just figured by natural deduction, what could be better than combining my original love of the game of basketball with this newfound love of what we would just call strength and conditioning. The writing was on the wall. The only thing I even considered doing at that part was being a basketball, we called it strength and conditioning coach at the time. Today, you'd call them a performance coach because their responsibilities are a little more holistic. But yeah, I decided that's what I do. And I actually intentionally chose to specialize in the youth and middle school and high school age demographic because a couple of reasons. One, I really believed that that's where I could make the biggest impact. Not just on the court, not just with their untapped strength and conditioning and power and explosiveness, but I also felt that I could have a big impact on them as a role model and to help, bring out their best character and teach them what a good attitude and work ethic and those types of things were. So most of my work was actually specialized with youth and high school players, but I had opportunities to work with some really renowned high school coaches and programs and players. And that's what eventually led me to doing some work with Nike and Jordan Brand and USA Basketball, which is where I got opportunities to work events with some pretty remarkable pro athletes at the time and pro players. But it all started by being singularly focused on working with high school age players.
Yeah. The singular maniacal focus was the way you just described that.
Yes.
Was something I think everyone can learn from. Whatever it is that you want to do, it's hard to do, Alan, because there's so many different things we could be doing. In our world now, attention's being pulled everywhere, right? Into multiple directions. But when you found your passion, you had a singular maniacal focus. So I hope everyone listening really understands how important that is to be able to establish and cultivate. Because even when it got tough, even when things were challenging, I'm sure you kept that focus and it led to the work that you're still doing today. Now, in that, I'm sure there was a lot of lessons you learned and things that you saw that were, let's say, things that required some fixing in people, right? When you were thinking about how to help them to optimize their performance, what were the most common pitfalls you saw, right? Whether that was from someone, a teenager or moving into professional sports, what were some of the things that you realized these are the common pitfalls I see that we need to address?
I'm going to put a pin in that for 1 second. And I'm so glad you went in that direction. And I can't wait to answer that. But I want to address something you just mentioned before, because I think it's really important. One of the things that I think is propagated all over the world now, and especially on social media, is this concept of follow your passion, follow your passion. And it's not that I don't agree with that. I just find that statement to be a little incomplete, because just following what you're passionate about, in my opinion, isn't enough. What you're passionate about also has to align with your natural talents and your gifts, like the things that you're naturally pretty good at. It also needs to align with something that the world needs, or at least a segment of the world needs. It needs to align with something where you feel like you're making a meaningful contribution. So it's kind of this big Venn diagram, and we've got all of these big circles, and then it needs to be in the epicenter of that. So just following your passion, I don't think is enough. Now, for me, basketball was the original passion, but that led me into coaching. And because my parents were elementary educators, I've always been fairly decent at communication, at teaching, at some of these intrinsic skills that I learned from my parents, but they align very well with being a coach. Like, for some reason, I've always had the innate ability to have high energy and to help motivate and inspire people. So for me, it wasn't just that I was passionate about basketball and strength and conditioning. That was a big pillar. But I also had some natural talents in being able to articulate and share those things. And then when I found there was a huge segment of the population, the youth and high school market, that wanted to improve their strength and explosiveness and power so that they could play sports at a higher level, then I took passion and I took natural talent and I took an actual need in the marketplace. And now this Venn diagram was starting to come together. So I just wanted to share that real quick because I think it's really important for folks to know passion is an unbelievable starting point, but it's not the only thing that's required. I want you to look at some of these other areas and make sure they align.
Yeah.
Now, with what you just shared, and I'm so glad we're going in this direction, there are a few major pitfalls that I saw folks that were trying to improve their level of performance and productivity. One is they would often try and skip over the basics. They were always looking for what was new and flashy. They were always looking for shortcuts and hacks. They were always looking for what was sexy, and they skipped over the basics, or at least they left the basics. And as you can see from the sign above my head, Success Simplified, I'm a believer in the basics. I'm a believer in the fundamentals. I'm a believer in untethering from everything that's unnecessarily complex and working towards mastery of a small handful of fundamental building blocks. And I believe that in every area. I mean, in the game of basketball, the primary skill sets are shooting, passing, rebounding, defending, and handling the ball. Those are the primary 5 skill sets. If you can't do those things very well, then you're not going to be a very good basketball player. Now, adjacent to those are also your athleticism. How do you move? How can you start and stop? How high can you jump? How explosive are you? What type of condition you're in? So those are kind of concentric circles outside of the initial skill sets. Then outside of that is your basketball IQ. Do you know how to play the game? Do you understand not only how to make a bounce pass, but do you know when to make a bounce pass? Do you know what angle to make a bounce pass from? So then you've got the basketball IQ part. And then the last part of that kind of pyramid, if you will, is do you have the grit and the heart and the stick-to-itiveness to push through and do hard things? So you kind of need all of that together to be the best basketball player that you're capable of. And then, of course, anything that requires a certain level of physicality, genetics will play a role. One's genetic predispositions will play a role. You can have all of those things that I just shared, but if you're 5'2", it will be harder to make it to the highest of level. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that's harder because a game of basketball, your height and your wingspan are certainly some advantages. So I kind of take that blueprint and I apply that to any other area that I'm looking to improve. Like if my goal is to be the best father that I can be, or the best keynote speaker that I can be, I unpack it in the same vein. And I say, all right, well, what are the primary skill sets or building blocks that I need to work towards mastery of to be a great father or to be a great keynote speaker? And then what are some of the concentric circles around that would help supplement those primary building blocks and primary fundamentals? And that's the stuff I need to work on. So whatever industry you're in or whatever area of life you're looking to level up, I want you to first of all, crystallize the picture of what excellence looks like, what it is that you're aiming for, and then work backwards from there and say, all right, what things do I need to work towards mastery of? But all of this goes back to the original question, folks that try to skip those steps, folks that just try to get to a Kobe Bryant level of mastery, but they skip all of the rungs of the ladder that he touched in order to get there. That is one of the biggest pitfalls. And I have others, but that's a lot. That's a mouthful. So I'll stop for a moment, but I can expand on that if you need.
No, that's great. And I really want to explore how that applies into the business world, into the corporate world. We will get to that in a bit, because I think what would be really helpful to hear, Alan, is because you've had a lot of firsthand experience with some of these incredible people and people who have achieved at such a high level. Is there a story of that? Can you recollect a time where you saw someone that, in the space, let's say, of basketball, that made that kind of commitment to the basics, where you saw the kind of way in which they committed and the kind of results that it then led to?
One of the signature stories that I usually open up, I would say 98% of all of my keynotes with, is about the first time I met Kobe Bryant back in 2007. And I had a chance to watch one of his really early morning workouts. And at that time, being a younger coach, I remember being really surprised that he was working on such basic movements and basic drills. Like he was drilling down on the same types of fundamentals that I'd done with middle school age players. Now he was doing them with just an unparalleled level of intensity and surgical precision and such detail. But it wasn't like he was doing anything super flashy. And that really surprised me as a young coach, because at that time, I believe in 2007, Kobe was the best player on the planet. So I figured that I would go watch this early morning workout and see him doing a lot of flashy stuff, a lot of sexy stuff. And that simply wasn't the case. Now, obviously, a player like Kobe Bryant that has that level of mastery, he didn't only do the basics. I mean, if you've ever watched him play, he's done some pretty incredible stuff. But the point is, he built the ability to do the more advanced techniques and the more advanced shots by mastering each step that came before that. He didn't try to jump to that. And that's the mistake I would always see a lot of younger players make. They'd see Kobe make some type of spin move, turnaround jump shot. And the next day in the gym, they wanted to go work on that move. It was like, no, he spent years, and in his case, decades, mastering each portion of that until he had the right to put those things together and make the advanced move that we've seen. So it's not that a player like Kobe only did the basics, it's that he never left them. And he kept working towards mastery of the fundamentals, and then would be able to build some of these other skill sets. And it's really the same in any area of life. I mean, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the work that I get to do is these principles have such high utility. Like I said, this stuff applies to the game of basketball if you're a player. It applies to fatherhood or being a great spouse. It applies to every area of the business world. It applies to relationships. Like if you want to improve your marriage, same thing. Ask yourself, what are the building blocks of a connected, intimate relationship? And how can I work towards mastery of those and never leave those? One, and I can say this with a huge smile because I'm divorced. One of the main reasons relationships start to dishevel is because many people stop doing the things they did in the beginning of the relationship that helped earn that person's affection and love. You were constantly speaking their love language in the beginning and going out of your way to leave little handwritten notes and do little thoughtful things. And then, as it happens to all of us, life starts to catch up and you've got other things going on. And then 10 years later, you're not doing any of that stuff and you're bewildered on why you no longer have that connection. Well, it's the same reason that if a basketball player stops going in to practice shooting their jump shot, they're not going to be a very good shooter anymore. We have to keep doing the things that got us to that level. And that's why this stuff, like I said, has such high utility.
Alan, that's an incredible story of Kobe Bryant. In 2007, when he was the name in basketball, it's not like a story of when he was first starting out and he was committing to the basics. It was in 2007, and you witnessed that. I mean, that's incredible, and it gets me curious as to what are the differences between, let's say, somebody like Kobe Bryant who makes that commitment and someone who goes after the flashy, shiny objects, that is looking for what does it take? What is required when you help others to instill that commitment? How do you help them to do that? What are the things that you feel like this is what they have to be? Is it discipline? Is it routine? What is it that makes the difference?
Well, you just mentioned two important spokes off that wheel, and discipline and routine certainly are big portions of that. And to be clear, my definition of discipline is making a decision in the moment that most aligns with the person you're trying to become. So a disciplined decision is not doing what you want to do the most. It's making a decision that's in alignment with who you're trying to become. It's not just what you want. It's not just what's convenient. It's not what you feel like. It's not for the instant gratification. It's doing whatever is in your long-term's best interest. And it's important for folks to note that discipline is actually a decision. See, motivation is more of a feeling. And some people, generally speaking, tend to be more highly motivated than others. I'm not going to argue that. And I would certainly, on that spectrum, most people that know me would probably move me towards the end of being highly motivated. But motivation, like any other feeling and emotion, is fleeting. It's not permanent. I'm certainly not motivated 24/7, 365. I may be more motivated than other people more times than not, but I'm not motivated all of the time. But if I'm only performing or only putting in work or only doing what needs to be done when I'm feeling motivated or I feel like it, it's going to end up being about a coin flip. So I don't rely on motivation. I rely on building the muscle of discipline. And I do the best I can in every single area of my life, whether it's my fitness, my relationships, my wealth, my health. to make as many disciplined decisions as possible every day. And I don't use perfection as my yardstick. I certainly don't have perfect habits, and I certainly don't make perfect decisions, but I do the best I can to make mostly disciplined decisions most of the time. And I give myself the grace and space to be less than perfect. So discipline is incredibly important. But the reason I share that is people often say things to me that makes me believe that they think discipline is something that's you either have it or you don't. It's almost like it's preset in our genetics, because they'll say things to me like, well, I wish I could work out in the morning, Alan, but I'm just not that disciplined. And I just remind them, hey, that's just a story you're telling yourself. Now, at present, you may historically have made plenty of undisciplined decisions. So you have the evidence to claim that you're not disciplined, but that can change with your very next decision. Like you can decide to wake up tomorrow and go for a walk. At your next meal, you can choose to make a more disciplined decision. And once again, disciplined decision would be with whatever aligns with who you're trying to become. It's not for me to tell someone else what they should be doing or what a disciplined decision is for them. I want this to come from within. So discipline is a big part of it. Another part is actually humility. And the reason humility is important, and even a player like Kobe, which I will acknowledge, most people would not think of Kobe Bryant and think of the word humility in the same sentence because he was, he had so much confidence. But humility is what allows you to stay open to coaching. Humility is what allows you to stay open to feedback. Humility is what allows people to tune in and listen and watch your show because they know they can still learn something new. And humility is no matter how good you are, you're humble enough to know that you can still get better. It's not playing the comparison game. Like I said, in 2007, Kobe was the best player in the world. So technically he could have said, hey, I'm already better than everyone else. I can take some days off. But he didn't look at it as that. He wasn't playing the comparison game. He was saying, I'm the best player in the world and I can still get better. I still have aspects of my game that can be refined. So humility is what allows us to continue to get better. And then kind of a third prong of that is you have to learn how to fall in love with the process. Like I will readily acknowledge, at least speaking in the first person, that sticking to the basics and working on the basics can become boring. It can become mundane. It can become monotonous. I'm not arguing that. But if you learn how to love the work, you learn how to love the process, you understand that what you're doing is inching you closer to the goal that you're trying to achieve, then it's something that you can stick to and make a commitment with. So I try and get folks to look through those lenses, take ownership over the fact that they create their own discipline, stay humble enough to always be open to improving and getting better, and learn how to love the process. We do live in an outcome-based world. Like I get that, like especially the game of basketball. I mean, it's the team that puts the most points on the scoreboard when the final buzzer goes off is declared the winner. Like you're either a winner or a loser dependent on an outcome. I get that. But the real secret is learning how to love the process that will increase the chance you'll get the outcome that you're looking for. Because if you just live and die by outcomes, your entire life is going to be a roller coaster. So instead, if you learn how to love the work. So in Kobe's case, he loved to work out. He loved to practice. That means technically he already won before the game's even played because he's doing something that he loves and he enjoys. And that's really how I've tried to build my life. I mean, for me, when I get on stage in front of an audience, I mean, I want to do the best job I'm capable of. I want to over deliver value. I want to share things that the audience will resonate with and they'll find helpful in their lives. But I love the work that leads up to that. So by the time I get on stage, I'm not worried about how I perform because I've already won. I'm already doing something that I love. I'm fully prepared. I'm rehearsed. I'm there to give my best and I can just be present and have fun. And to me, that's kind of the secret, if you will, is learning how to love the work.
I think it is a secret, Alan. I think it is because not too many people really understand that. And I know that you do. I definitely align with everything you said. What I was just thinking about, he's the best, one of the best golfers in the world right now. Is it Scott Scheffler? Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah. He was recently quoted, Alan, saying that he doesn't get any fulfillment out of winning any of the championships. He said, I don't get any fulfillment out of winning. For me, like you said, it's fleeting. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. And if I invest all of my happiness and the love for this game into winning, I'm not going to be happy. So instead, what I gather from what he said is he's fallen in love with the process. He just enjoys the work. And hey, whatever the outcome is going to be the outcome. And he's not saying that's going to be what determines whether he feels fulfilled or happy.
Yes, and I love that. And I try and adopt the same mindset. Now, with that, at least I'll speak for me. I won't speak for Scotty Scheffler, but now I certainly have my preferences. I would prefer that an audience is hanging on every word, loves everything I say, and gives me a standing ovation. That would be my preference. But if they don't, if for some reason they miss the mark or I miss the mark or it doesn't go as well as I hope, I don't allow that to define my fulfillment. I don't let that define my self-worth. And I certainly don't let that define my commitment to my craft. That would be my preference. Just like as a basketball player, like I put in the work. I'm doing everything I can in workouts and practice. I would prefer that my team has more points at the end of the game than the other team. I would prefer to win. But if we don't win, that doesn't take away my joy for the game. It doesn't take away my love for the process. It doesn't take away my competitiveness to want to try to win the next game and to get right back at it. So for me, it's that love for the process that's so important. And it's that process that would keep a player like Kobe Bryant doing what other people would consider to be very basic drills, over and over. And that was actually one of the lines that I would use when I was working with high school players. And they'd say, we're doing basic footwork, and they'd say, this is boring. And I'd say, okay, I understand that, but is winning boring? And they're like, no. And I'm like, all right, well, this puts you on the path to give yourself a better chance to win. So if you want that thing, then you've got to do the work that leads to that thing. You can't skip steps. And that's the other kind of a tangential point to this is oftentimes, like, we'll see a player like Scotty Scheffler and say, all right, I want to be a great golfer like him. So let me find out what he's doing. And it's like, yeah, but you're not on his level yet. He's in chapter 20 of his golf career. You're on chapter 1. So what you need to do is figure out what he did when he was at your level, when he was just starting out. So you can't skip the next 19 chapters and go right to what he's doing now. I mean, that's ridiculous. You need to figure out what he did when he was first starting, and then that's what you need to do. And if you do that, there's a chance you'll get there quicker than he did because you're going to be able to learn from him and maybe learn from some of his missteps and mistakes. So that's one of the reasons that I think it's important that we all have mentors and people that are further down the road than we are, but we can't study what they're doing now. We got to look at what they're doing before. I mean, that would be like me looking at Warren Buffett and saying, all right, how does he have several $billion? I need to do what he's doing. Well, he's in his mid 90s right now. That doesn't do me any good. I need to figure out what he did when he was 50 years old. And then I need to commit to those fundamentals and then maybe, have a similar result in the future.
Yeah. I agree. I think the problem that we can fall into is we are acting on feeling a lot of the time. It's feeling, right? I don't feel excited about doing this basic thing. The other thing excites me more. So I act in a way that gives me that feeling. Now, the way you talked about discipline, I've never heard it said that way, and I loved it. I wrote it down. You said it's making a decision that aligns with who you want to become. So what that requires, if I'm kind of breaking it down, because how my mind works, like, okay, what would that actually look like in practice? It would mean that in the moment of decision, you need to bring to mind the future you. You need to bring to mind what it is that you really want to accomplish. You have to see that. And I'm sure that's what Kobe did, right? He was seeing himself as the greatest basketball player and even better than he was in 2007. He would see that, and that would get him to commit to the discipline of committing to the basics.
100%. You nailed it. It's making a decision in the present moment that your future self will thank you for, that your future self will be grateful for or appreciate. So for me, I'll be turning 50 this coming January, and physical fitness and wellness and longevity is something that's incredibly important to me. So at 50 years old, I'm proud to say I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in. And I want to continue that. I want 10 years from now to be, when I'm 60, to be the best shape I've ever been in, and 70, and each decade after that. So the way that I look at that is, for me, when it comes to making a disciplined decision, whether it's a singular meal, like what am I going to eat for lunch? I just ask myself, is this meal going to take me a little bit closer to being an incredibly fit 60-year-old or not? Is whether or not I get up and decide to go for a workout, is that going to take me closer to? So I just try to make decisions that the 60-year-old health and fit Alan will be grateful for. And you can apply that through any lens in your life. And to me, that's what discipline is all about. But I cannot stress enough, this is not about perfection. Not every single decision I make in my life is in alignment with being a fit 60-year-old. However, the overwhelming majority of decisions I make are. And like I said before, I give myself some grace and space to be fallible and to be less than perfect. I give myself permission to make some mistakes. And sometimes they're intentional. Like sometimes I'll do a cheat meal with my kids and we'll go out for pizza and have a great time. And I do that with absolutely zero guilt or shame. Now, I know that eating a pizza is not making me more fit for when I'm 60 years old. But in that moment, I'm okay with making that trade. I have no problem with that. But
you're intentional.
Yes, it's intentional. Exactly. It's purposeful. It's conscious. It's not by default. See, I don't want anything in my life to be by default. I want everything in my life to be by design. Now, with that said, like every other human being walking the earth right now, I have some blind spots. I have some areas where I'm unaware. So there are some areas in my life I'm sure that I am unintentionally falling into default instead of by design. And that's one of the reasons that I try to insulate myself with people that love me enough to help expose those blind spots, to tell me things that maybe I don't see or I'm not aware of. Because to me, what we should all be on a journey of is heightening our awareness, because awareness is always the first step to improvement, because you'll never improve something you're unaware of and you'll never fix something you're oblivious to. So I can also say right now at almost 50 years old, generally speaking, this is the highest my self-awareness has ever been. I'm more aware of what I do well, but I'm also equally aware of the things that I don't do so well, my biggest opportunities for growth. And I hope that awareness continues to improve. So to me, that's kind of the game we're playing, and it's the long game. And if we can continue to improve in these different areas and make disciplined decisions and make the commitment to doing things our future self will thank us for, then we reap both benefits. See, I'm making decisions in the present moment that I hope to look back on when I'm 60 and be thankful for, but I'm also reaping those benefits in the moment. Like if I choose to eat a healthier lunch today, that's going to be more nourishing to my body. It's going to help reduce inflammation. It's going to give me more energy. It's going to give me more mental clarity. It's going to help me sleep better at night. So even though I'm doing something today that I hope my future self is grateful for, I also get to reap the benefits of it in the present moment. So it's not like I'm postponing and saying, oh, I just can't wait until I'm 60. No, I want to enjoy every minute of the next 10 years. But I just want to make sure that I'm laying the bricks to laying that foundation to give myself an opportunity to be the best I can be when I'm 60. But I'm enjoying now.
Yeah. And it's all, like you said, by design, not by default.
Yes.
And so there were two things that I'm pulling from what you just shared. The first was self-awareness. So cultivating that self-awareness so that it continues to build over time. And then the connection to the future self, being able to stay reminded of or keep that front of mind. Are there things, Alan, that you do regularly, practices of sorts, that help to cultivate those two things?
Absolutely. And let me make one, I guess, to put into context. The future doesn't really exist, or at least we can't ever be in the future. The future really only exists in our mind and in our language. We can use future-based language, and we can make an assumption of what we assume the future is going to be. So I don't want it to get lost in. Most of my faculties are spent in the present, in maximizing the here and the now, and in being where my feet are. I just know that if I constantly make good decisions in the present, then my future will simply take care of itself. But as you said so perfectly, what I use as a framing exercise is I'm constantly cognizant of what I hope the future will end up being. But we can't ever be in the future, because once you get to the future, it's now the present.
It's now the present.
Yeah, exactly. But I do believe, and with that said, the same can be said for the past. You can't ever go back to the past outside of language or outside of memory or your mindset. All we can ever do is be in the present moment. Now, with that said, I do believe in looking back to learn lessons from the past. And I do believe in looking forward to plan for the future. But for me, the overwhelming majority of my faculties, I try to have dialed into the present moment. And it's been my experience that when I spend most of my life intentionally in the present, my performance goes up, my productivity goes up, my self-awareness goes up. Like all of the attributes that lead to a fulfilling life, like my fulfillment goes up when I can learn to find joy in the present moment. And with all of that said, that is still to this day my biggest struggle as a human being. Because like everybody listening or watching to this, it is easy for me to start ruminating on things in the past. I mean, you're talking about stuff that happened before that can't be changed. It is equally easy for me to start getting anxious and worried about a presumed future. Despite everything I just told you consciously, I still pull myself in both of those directions. So I would say at present, the biggest challenge I face in my life is being locked into the present moment. But what I can say with a huge smile is I am more present more often today than I've ever been at any previous time in my life. Now, I still have some off days. I'll still have a day where I'm depressed about something that happened before. I'm anxious about something that may never even happen in the future. But generally speaking, if you were to look at the totality of an entire year, I have spent more time being present so far in 2025 than I have in any previous year of my life. And I want to continue that trend. If I'm on your show 10 years from now and it's the 60-year-old version of Alan, I hope I can say then, Jay, I'm even more present today than I was 10 years ago when I came on your show the first time. So for me, it's all about continually doing the work. And that's what all of this stuff is. I had heard a phrase a few years ago that I just absolutely loved. And it's this phrase of I'm always becoming, always becoming. You never actually arrive. You can't actually put your flag in the ground and say, hey, everyone, I'm self-aware. Because as soon as you stop doing the work to be self-aware, you'll no longer be self-aware. Same thing with fitness. At present, I work out and move my body consistently. I make healthy, nutritious, decisions for what I eat. I get adequate sleep and rest and recovery. Well, as soon as I stop doing all of those things, over time, I'll no longer be physically fit. So these aren't things that you stop. They're things that you just adopt and weave into what you do. And you're always becoming. So for me, I'm always becoming a better version of myself. And just like the stock market never goes in just one straight line. The stock market goes like this. But if you zoom back out historically over the last 30 to 40 years, it has gone up and to the right if you zoom out far enough. Now, there have been some pitfalls and there's been some hot, but same thing with me. Have there been some days where I've had very low self-awareness? Absolutely. But if you zoom back over the last 10 years, my line of self-awareness is slowly going up and to the right. My line of fulfillment is slowly going up and to the right. My line of physical and mental wellness and fitness is going up and to the right. So all of these things are trending in the right direction. And if I have a setback on any day or week or month, that's just the way it falls.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing so openly and vulnerably that it's still a challenge for you, because I feel the same way. It's still like I've committed to being present. I've practiced mindfulness. I'm a meditator. I've been doing it for years, Alan. And I could still be in the shower and a memory comes up from something from 15 years ago that like grips me with anxiety or frustration. And it's funny. I'm like, where did that come from? But if I am mindful of it and I'm intentional, what I noticed today versus, let's say, 15 years ago is I can become very aware of it and it won't grip me the way it used to. Like it won't ruin my day. Whereas before it might take a little time and I'd be caught in the ruminating thoughts and it would derail me a bit. Now I'm like, oh, there it went. And I come back. That's on a good day. And that's not always the case. Just similar to you, right? I have my good days and I have my bad days. Now, I want to touch on a little bit of what we learned about Bobby and his story, because so much of what you've shared here, I think applies to what he's working through, because he has a team and his team is struggling to perform. And based off of what I heard, you would recommend helping him to identify the basics and making it simpler, because it seems like he and his team have overcomplicated the simple.
Yes.
So how do you help people to identify that? Because every role will be a little different, right? But in this case, I think it's in the sales space. But how would you guide someone through a process to be able to say, let's identify what the basics are before, like we have to know what we're committing to, right? So how do you help someone find out what are the fundamentals?
Well, you just said something there too that I love. Another saying that I use on stage is that complexity undermines execution. So one of the things, and I think from what I read about Bobby and hearing of that story, I do believe his heart and his intentions are in the right place. I think there's been some slight dysfunction on his ability to articulate and communicate that to the team and get everybody on the same page. And, first and foremost, what Bobby needs to do is to be able to look into the mirror and hold himself fully accountable. A hat tip to Jocko Willink, but he needs to have extreme ownership over the fact that the team's not performing. So he needs to be able to say, where have I fallen short in supporting you guys to get to the level that you need to perform? Where have I been complicit in not giving you the support or the resources or the mentorship or whatever it is that you need? So instead of looking outward and saying, you guys aren't doing what you're supposed to do, he needs to look inward and go, where have I failed my team? See, I'm of the belief that if you're a CEO and you have a 100-person company, you don't have 99 people that work for you. You work for 99 people. It is your job to pour into them and to create a safe, inclusive environment where folks feel that they can make the best contribution that they can, and they know they're going to be supported. They know you have their back. You're going to hold them to an incredibly high standard of excellence, and you're going to have a high level of accountability, but it's going to be done with love and compassion and empathy. And that's kind of the missing piece that I think Bobby's missing at present. And then an offshoot of that is also what you just said so insightfully, is Bobby's got to get back to the basics. He's got to get back to the basics for himself from a leadership standpoint, but he's got to get the team dialed back in to their basics. And some of those basics will be dependent on each of their positions, on each of their roles, but that's what it needs to be. And he can simply do that by kind of wiping the slate clean and letting everybody know, hey, I know this last quarter we haven't quite performed at the level that we're all capable of. I'm going to fully hold myself responsible for that because I did not put each of you in a position to be successful, and that's on me, and I'm going to change. Here's what I'm willing to do to change that, and then be able to explain to them that this is a safe and inclusive environment, that I am here to support you and pour into you and put you in the right position and do everything in my power for you to be successful. And then in order to do that, here's what I need from each of you. Here are the basics and the fundamentals that I need you to work towards mastery of. Here's what winning looks like to me and to us. And here's the standard that I'm going to hold you to. And if he can kind of reshuffle that stuff, there's no doubt in my mind that Bobby can get everybody back on board and get everybody swimming in the right direction. But it all starts with him taking full ownership of where he's been deficient.
Yeah, I agree. I think the ability to take ownership is easier said than done. It takes courage to do that.
Yes,
but I think you're right to start there. It's the right place to start. And then for his team, I'm just imagining how they would respond. Like I'm imagining somebody on his team saying, yeah, that sounds all good, but then I have emails that come in from this group, and then I have all this other stuff that I need to do. And, Bobby, you're telling me to stay focused on the fundamentals and the basics, but there's all this other stuff going on. How would you recommend people, especially in our world, we're so we're so hyper connected, right? There's so much coming in, so much influx. How do you recommend people to stay focused on those fundamentals and to not get pulled in to all the other stimuli that can be grabbing your attention?
There's two things. One, and the first, I learned this from Coach K, the former men's basketball coach at Duke, the all-time winningest coach in the history of men's basketball. And Coach K doesn't believe in rules. He believes in standards. He believes that rules confine people, whereas standards are kind of a moral code that he wants everyone to live up to. So the first thing I'd do if I was Bobby is I'd gather the team together and say, I want your help in co-creating standards. If we can all collectively agree that this is what excellence looks like, this is what winning looks like. If we achieve these numbers or these results by the end of 2025, can we agree that that would be a remarkable year? And once everyone agrees to that, then we say, all right, what are the standards that we need to hold ourselves to to increase the likelihood that that will happen. So and you get the team to help co-create that. You get the team to have a vested interest and some skin in the game. So this is not top down where I'm going to give you a list of rules and you follow them or else. This is going to be, hey guys, I want to hear your opinions and your thoughts. Help me create a list of standards that if each of us lives up to these standards every single day, hitting that goal will just be a natural byproduct of that. So it's not necessarily the goal that we're after. What we're trying to do is create an environment of success and excellence where we reach those standards every single day. Now, one of the exercises that I've used with groups that helps so much, and I think this is perfect for Bobby's world, I would want Bobby to sit down with each member of the team. And let's just say, in this case, I'm Bobby, and Jay, you report, you're on my team. I'm going to sit down with you, Jay, and I'm going to give you an index card and a pen. And I'm going to ask you to write down, and let's just call it your big three. I want you to write down, Jay, what you consider to be your three most important responsibilities within your role on this team, your three most important duties. Another way to look at that is, Jay, what are the three ways that you personally can make the biggest contribution to our team and what we're doing? That if tomorrow, if you're only going to do three things tomorrow, Jay, what should those three things be? I want you to get really clear on the three ways that you can make the most meaningful impact on us hitting those goals. And then, as Bobby, I'm going to take an index card and I'm also going to write down what I think your big three are. Not my big three. I'm going to write down Jay's big three based on what I know about you, your talents and your gifts and your experience and expertise with the team. I'm going to write down what I think your three biggest responsibilities are, or where I think you can make the most meaningful contribution. That if tomorrow when you come into work, Bobby, what are Jay, the only three things I want you to focus on. And then when we're done, you and I are going to have a really thoughtful conversation, but we're going to compare your card to my card. And let's see how many of the three we're in alignment on. Let's see if the things that you believe you should focus on are the same things I believe you should focus on. And I can tell you right now, for any of your leaders that are watching or listening, if you do this exercise, there is almost a zero chance that you're going to go 3 for 3 with every member of your team. You're going to immediately start to find some dysfunction and some things splintering off. And Jay thinks he should be doing things slightly different than I think he should be doing. And that's a wonderful thing. I don't want that to disappoint you or discourage you. That is an invitation now for Bobby and Jay to have a real open conversation and say, Jay, thank you so much for trusting me enough to write these down. I would love for you to explain why you believe these are your three most important responsibilities. And then if you're open to it, Jay, I would like to share with you what I think these three are your most important. And let's have an open dialogue and an honest, direct conversation about it. And really the conversation won't be over until you and I can come to some type of consensus of what your big three are going to be. And we'll both, there'll be a little give and take. Like, I want you doing work that you find meaningful, that you believe is making a contribution, but I also need you to be willing to make the sacrifice to do what the team needs. So this can't just be a list of what you want to do every day. This is a list of what you need to do to help our team reach that goal. And if I can get every single member of the team understanding what their big three are, and we're going to all hold each other accountable to that list of standards that we've all co-created, now we've got an environment where success can blossom. Because as a leader, it is not my job to get results. As a leader, it's my job to create the type of fertile environment that results can be the byproduct of that. And then I would just say to you and say, Jay, I know that you have a million things going on, and I don't want you to worry about any of them except for those big three. And unless email was on that list of big three, then that's something that is secondary. Your maniacally obsessed focus will be on the big three, and then you can get to the other stuff when you need to. So don't be worried about something that's over here till it degrades what you actually need to be focused on. And if I can help inspire and motivate the team to show up every day to pour into their big three, and we all hold each other accountable to that high standard of excellence, it's not going to be a matter of if we hit our goal. It'll just be a matter of when.
I love the exercises because it does three things. One, it helps to create clarity. Right? I know what my three are. Two, there's alignment. There's alignment between, let's say, Bobby's team member and Bobby as the leader. And then the third one is permission. So it gives permission to the employee to say, hey, I can say no to these other things because my manager, my leader recognizes that these three are priority, and therefore these other things I don't need to focus as much of my attention on. I think that's such a great exercise. Now, I want to ask you, Alan, if you had a chance to meet Bobby in this story. Let's say Bobby was attending one of your keynotes, you got off the stage, you have a chance to meet people in the audience. Bobby comes up to you, tells you his story, tells you what he's working through, tells you his challenges. You listen, you acknowledge, you empathize with what he's struggling with right now, and you have a chance to ask him a question or two to get him to see things differently or to open his mind up a bit. What would you ask him, Alan, in that moment?
I would say, Bobby, thank you so much for sharing so openly and having the courage to be vulnerable. And I can tell that you've got a big heart and that this team means a lot to you. And I appreciate you acknowledging that right now your team is not performing to the level that you believe they can. So my only question for you is, what role have you played in that? How have you been complicit to the team not performing to that level? Like you've told me about Sally and Joey and Melvin and what they haven't done. I got it. I'm crystal clear on that. But they're not here right now. I'm asking you, what role have you played in this team not performing to the level that it's capable of? And if you're willing to continue to have the courage to be vulnerable and honest and do the hard work, when you can answer that question, Bobby, then you'll be on the path to turning things around.
Powerful. Wow. What a great question to ask somebody, to really encourage them and invite them to take ownership in a very respectful but very direct way. Alan, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day, my friend. This was excellent. I really enjoyed this conversation. For anyone listening, check out Alan's work. It's alansteinjr.com. I'll spell that for you. ALANSTEINJR.com, or on socials at Alan Stein Jr. You will find a lot of Alan's content through Instagram and any of the other social sites. Alan, I really appreciate you, brother. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. And in 10 years, we're going to do it again, and you're going to be a more self-aware Alan, and hopefully I'll be a more self-aware Jay.
I would love that. Thanks, Jay. This was a lot of fun.
I loved speaking with Alan. He has such a passion for this topic, and he's an excellent communicator. Told some great stories too. I'll do my best to synthesize it down for us into 3 insights and 3 actionable takeaways. The first insight: following your passion isn't enough. I appreciated his honesty. You need to have a strength, and you need to be making a meaningful contribution. There needs to be an actual need in the marketplace. So it's great to have passions, but you have to be a bit more objective and being able to take inventory of, am I also great at this? And is there also a need in the marketplace for this? Second insight: don't let the outcome define your fulfillment, your self-worth, or your commitment to your craft. I'm going to say that again. Don't let the outcome define your fulfillment, self-worth, or commitment to your craft. It's okay to have a preference. I can tell you this: I like to win at everything I do. I am very competitive. See me on a tennis court, basketball court, I am playing to win. Any game, even, just trivia. I play to win. And if I lose, I don't let it be something that grips me. I always have that preference, but I don't attach to it. And that's how we want to live. We want to be able to fully engage in the moment with everything we got, but not let the result be how we define ourselves. Third insight: you're always becoming. I really liked the way he put that. I think he said someone shared that with him. And it is, for example, always the cultivation of self-awareness. You're always becoming. You're always learning. And while we do certain activities to be able to become something in the future, Alan said it, the future doesn't exist. Meaning we don't experience the future. We experience the here and now. But what we do in the here and now is pointing to what we're going to become. In other words, it cultivates what we will then experience in the future. So we want to be able to be in the here and now and continue to go up and to the right, the way he described. Actionable takeaways. Number 1, this is the biggest one: commit to the basics. Commit to the basics, the fundamentals, the flashy things, the things that we are so often attracted to, or the things that don't really get the result a lot of the time. It's the fundamental, boring things. And what are those for you? What are the fundamentals that you need to commit to for your own excellence, for your own success? Know what they are, and then make that commitment and fall in love with it. Fall in love with the process. Reframe it in your mind, not as something that's this boring, awful thing, but it's something that's helping you to become who it is that you really want to be. And then the second actionable takeaway: make decisions in the moment that most align with the person you want to become. That was his definition of discipline, which I think is a better definition than just gritting your teeth and doing something you don't want to do. Making a decision in the moment that aligns with who you want to become. And that's what you see in some of these incredible professional athletes that he's worked with. And it's also tapping into that humility he was talking about, to know that you haven't gotten to a place where you don't have to commit to those practices anymore, that you have to keep practicing, you have to keep getting better. And then the third actionable takeaway: when it comes to leadership, align on responsibilities and priorities. Meaning, he used the example of meeting with someone on your team and asking them to identify what are the three greatest responsibilities they have. And then the leader writes them down and then check notes on it. It isn't to then impose what they are, but to have a conversation and an exchange around what are the big three things you need to be focusing on to get that consensus. And I like the way he said it when it came to leadership. 99 people don't work for you. If you're, let's say, a CEO with 99 people under you, you work for 99 people. Join us on Friday. I'm going to dive into some of the ways in which you can commit to those fundamental things, the things that are not always so fun, the techniques I'm going to give you, the hacks. These are 5 specific things that work for everyone. You just have to figure out your way of applying it. I've included this in workshops that I've done throughout the world. I've done this, given this to my one-on-one clients. It's really effective hacks that help you to create habits and build up routine, and even have some rituals in place that allow for you to be able to commit to the things that you oftentimes don't feel like doing, and be able to really be the disciplined version of you that sees discipline not as something that's this negative, awful thing, but as something that's helping you to become who it is you ultimately want to be and make the impact that you want to make in this world. So if you, by the way, want to submit your story, reminder, you can. Right now, you can go to jaybossi.me/podcast. There's a form right there. It's very easy to fill out. Let me know what you're going through. Let me know what challenge you're facing. And that way I can bring on a guest that can really help to support you and your needs, and you could be featured on the show. So please do that if you'd like to. And until next time, thank you so much for listening.